Can the Baltimore Ravens win the AFC? We talk about that and more with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we've returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. And of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. We're back here. It's Purple Friday. We're going to be talking with Qadry Ismail coming up here. We had a great show, but this is still Locked On Ravens After Dark Part 3. Still no power here. And so this is actually future me talking to you, because in the video recording, my video starting at like the 11-minute mark is not synced up with the audio. We had this issue a couple months ago. Q's audio and video is fine. Like, it's totally fine. But I just wanted to tell people, just so if you're wondering when you get to that part, oh, why is the video and audio not synced up? Again, it's been a weird couple days here without power. At the virtual background era going on. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. But without any further ado, let's dive into the content with Qadry Ismail here now today. We have a guest this time for Locked On Ravens After Dark Part 3. Qadry Ismail knows all about the virtual background era from March. Well, he's back again today talking more Ravens. I'm excited to have you back. How you doing?
Yeah, no, I know this has been kind of a crazy week with the weather and all that. So we are here and we are ready to talk some Ravens.
Oh, yeah. The power still out here. So we're going on 2 full days, and that's not going to stop us from putting out Ravens content, though, because Q, we have to talk more about the Lamar Jackson, Bernard Pollard situation on Twitter. I mean, this was something on Wednesday night. This really came out of nowhere. Now, we know that Bernard Pollard, his time with the organization didn't really come to the best end. He's been very outspoken about the organization, John Harbaugh, and obviously Lamar Jackson, saying that, he can't win a Super Bowl. His play isn't sustainable, this and that and the other. But Lamar Jackson took up his defense on Wednesday night. And really, it was a whole heated Twitter debate. I mean, what did you take away from that whole thing? Because this is Lamar Jackson, who I know takes a lot of hate on a daily basis. But at this point, just seemed like he had enough and defended himself, which I think on his part, good for him.
Well, I think good for him in some ways and not so good for him in other ways. So the good for him is that, you feel, hey, look, my credentials are solid, sound. Who are you to say what I can or cannot do? But then the flip side of it is you're Lamar Jackson and you don't need to defend yourself. Let others defend you. Your silence speaks so well that they need not hear what you say. And I think this is where maybe it's the way in which guys, nowadays look at their media presence and their instant connection to fans and their fan base, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Instagram, heck, even Snapchat or TikTok. I think those platforms, you get this instant access. So, again, with Bernard Pollard, here's a former player, I think is what, caused Lamar to really step up and step out and say, what he needed to say, which was, whoa, yo, bro, what have you, basically, he's like, what have you done? I've done, my credentials are strong and solid. You weren't even an integral part of the Ravens Super Bowl championship team. And why are we even having this conversation? Now, that's where I think the back and forth, the digs back and forth with each other kind of get out of hand. And in my mind, to be perfectly honest with you, there's no real winner in that. And Lamar is talking about, his contract and negotiation of his contract. So I would, pretty much stick to that, keep my, mind free of any outside distraction. And it's a major outside distraction for Lamar. And I know that, Bernard Pollard, I'm sure he's recognizing, Lamar has a very interesting and loyal fan base when it comes to It's one thing to be a Ravens fan, but I think there's also a Lamar Jackson fan, and I think some of the comments back and forth between each other, I wish didn't come about. But then at the same time, it made his fan base jump out there and really make their feelings and presence felt. But then you also had the Lamar haters and some of the clips back and forth. In my mind, it made for entertainment, but it was a bit unnecessary as far as Lamar trying to answer back a former Raven and a critic of his game.
Yeah, and Q, something that I feel like gets taken away a little bit, and I know for athletes in general, people sometimes don't like view them as humans, which is such a terrible thing. Like these people are humans; they have emotions. So for a player like Lamar Jackson, who going back to Louisville, I mean, has heard so much criticism about his ability to throw the ball. Can he translate the game to the NFL level? Once he's in the NFL, has the success. Well, can he do this better? Can he do that better? There's a lot that goes into it. So I mean, he gets hate pretty much every single day from a lot of different people. But do you think that the fact that, again, you kind of talked about it a little bit, that it was a former player instead of, let's say, just a random fan, like Joe123 on Twitter? If since this was a former player, do you think that might have caused the reaction? Because it's been very clear that Bernard Pollard has had these opinions and these takes on Lamar Jackson, not just for a month or for a couple months. It's been years for Bernard Pollard talking about how Lamar Jackson can't have the success and can't do this and can't do that.
Yeah, I think part of the fact that he is a former player, former Raven too. Um, the way in which I think Lamar was saying, "Well, I'd never heard of you," but clearly he's recognized or clapped back at him, kind of feeling some type of way, like, "Yo, bro, you've been trying to diss me for a while now," and I think he's realized I'm not having it. I'm done. I'm like, this is what's what, and so. I think for Lamar Jackson, it's one of those cases where he is feeling maybe if it was anybody else, no big deal. But because it's Bernard Pollard, former player, he should know better than to, kind of really as a black quarterback and then you got a former black athlete, you already know it's difficult. But to raise some of the things that he raised and the way in which he did it, I think it was out of pocket on Bernard Pollard's part. And I think Lamar Jackson, whether or not he is, I'm not going to use the word sensitive, but clearly he has a sensitivity to that. And, he kind of went back and forth with him.
And I think overall, Lamar Jackson has stayed very, very quiet about all the hate that he gets. I mean, he's somebody who does move in silence, as people say, but this was a time where I think, yeah, he just had enough. And I think that athletes have that right, definitely, because I give athletes and a lot of people who like celebrity status, they take hate very often. And it can be very tough, in that moment to stay quiet, to kind of put the phone down and just focus. But I think Lamar Jackson has done a good job of that. But this was an instance where I think, again, he wanted to defend himself. He did that. And then the back and forth and the back and forth. And you had a lot of current and former Ravens responding, whether it be with memes or with, their practice experience with Pollard, with Anthony Allen. But you have a lot of former players responding. I mean, I was trying to think back, Q, and it feels like for all these high profile athletes, they definitely do respond to some critics on Twitter. Like that Lamar Jackson did it to Chris Sims like a couple of months ago. Like we've seen that with him. At this point, the stuff has been building and building and building to the point where it feels like even if Lamar Jackson wins a Super Bowl, to be like, well, can you win a second one? Like it's just the continuous, can he this, can he that? I mean, Q, have you seen an athlete, whether it be ever or recently, that has been as I guess the word disrespected as Lamar Jackson has through channels just based off of the success that he's already had at the NFL level and even going back to college?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think back. I mean, there's been guys who've been criticized, sure. Um, but when you look at the credentials of Lamar, he just was a phenomenal quarterback at Louisville. And the fact that he, was a Heisman Trophy winner, the fact that he was asked to switch to receiver by some general managers, um, didn't really respect his game. I think the fact that the Ravens got him, still people were like, well, I remember we were, at certain games and Joe was, doing his thing and we're like, well, why don't they just put in like a Lamar package? And have him run around. And you're like, well, because he wants to be a quarterback, and it's not just put in a Lamar package and have him run around. It's more than that. Clearly, when he took over for a franchise quarterback that won a Super Bowl, that won a Super Bowl MVP, that had a historic playoff run, no interceptions throughout the playoffs, just one from on the road experiences as a Baltimore Raven quarterback, and had his fair share of criticism. But by and large, I mean, people love Joe Flacco. Now you get replaced, and I think what he's done is remarkable. My guy Shannon Sharp, he chimed in and he spoke on how people would get on him. He didn't feel Lamar, and he stood by the fact that he doesn't feel Lamar, can be accurate with the football. And I'm like, I've watched every Lamar Jackson game. That dude has come leaps and bounds from the first drive of his time when he finally took over for Joe, where it was some like crazy 16-play drive and not a single pass was thrown. But the bottom line, he got it in the end zone. From literally, he was slinging the ball around so many times. Obviously, his MVP year, he had 36 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, I think it was. His QBR rating was number 1, tops in the league. He's more than proven himself time and time again. I think going back to last year's Detroit game, that wasn't running the ball. That was slinging the ball. And I know Hollywood Brown, he had the 3 drops. If he were to catch those balls, I mean, those are on-target throws, deep down the field throws. You're looking at a whole different statistic, So I've seen Lamar Jackson be an explosive, dynamic player who is a phenomenal quarterback that can throw in the pocket, that can also escape and extend plays. Oh my goodness. If I'm a receiver and if the play is extended, hallelujah, because that helps me out. I can be able to create a little bit more separation and get down the football field. So let's be honest. I think Shannon, in my opinion, love me some Shannon Sharp, one of my all-time favorite Hall of Fame players that I played with as a teammate. But I disagree with him because from the seat that I sit, Lamar Jackson is a dual threat quarterback, and he can win games in multiple ways that other quarterbacks cannot. That makes him special, and he's accurate with the football. I believe that he, in fact, yes, can grow. When I say grow, I'm talking about through the playoffs. He can grow as a quarterback however he needs to win games in the playoffs. And as we're saying, whether it be the ceiling being the AFC Championship and let the chips fall where they may when it comes to the Super Bowl. He's bona fide. He's legit.
Yeah, and I think part of it also is like the takes that we see now, like the criticisms that we see now for Lamar Jackson. Like, he's not a perfect player. Like, nobody's a perfect player. There are areas he can improve. But a lot of the takes that at least I sometimes see are ones that are recycled from his rookie year, or maybe from parts where he struggled, that just aren't true anymore, or that he's improved upon. Like the sustainable play thing, where he took a lot of hits his rookie season. He was fighting for that extra yard instead of getting out of bounds. He's been a lot more careful with his body over the course of the last couple of seasons. I mean, the pocket stuff that has always been something that's been overblown. And I just feel like with a player like him, who's, again, proven so much, this isn't like Lamar Jackson has struggled and is like a top 20 quarterback, but this is a player that has proven himself as a top 10 guy and then gets left off a top 10 list for other guys who clearly aren't at that level, who don't have the unanimous MVP that Jackson had. And people discredit that, I think, because this is a what have you done for me now lately league. And what Lamar Jackson did was at the back half of that 2021 season, he struggled starting at the Miami game and then got injured. But people still discredit the first half of the year that he had, which was really good. Like, he had a really good first.
He had the #1 offense. He was #1 quarterback. I mean, come on. He was killing it the first half of the year.
He was literally in the MVP. Like, he had the MVP moment against Indianapolis when he led that comeback, had the crazy stat line.
What about him silencing San Diego, who was on the hot streak? And who did he duel? He dueled with Justin Herbert, who was supposed to be far superior to him, but he doesn't have the statistics when it comes to Lamar's credentials. Like, come on. It's nonsense, and he was doing it with the most injured team in the NFL.
Right, and the injuries, they did not stop. It did not get better. In fact, they got worse, and unfortunately, he was one of them towards the end of the season. So I think, again, Lamar Jackson is so very, very unfairly criticized for a lot of different things that he deserves. Look, some things he does deserve to be criticized on, right? There are areas of improvement. But the areas that he has improved on, people deserve to give him credit there. That's where he deserves the credit for the improvements that he's made. But we still have a lot to talk about here on the show. We're going to talk about the Ravens and if they could potentially win the AFC. But we're going to start off with the AFC North first in the second segment. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about here on the show. First, though, I do want to tell you a little bit about Built Bar. And Built Bar has a lot of cool stuff going on right now. You've probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar. But your friends at Built have now given coconut brownie chunk Puffs treatment, and that means that the coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor is now a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness, and all Built Bars are made with proteins, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and also provides a ton of health benefits as well. So you can eat something that tastes good and is also good for you. So that delicious coconut-rich sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow flavor, you can stop fantasizing about it and get to Built.com to order your box of coconut brownie chunk Built Puffs right now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens After Dark Part 3. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, there's a lot of talk about this Ravens team. How good can they be? Are they going to be able to challenge in the AFC North? But I want to take it a step further, and we'll talk about that whole AFC in the final segment. But let's talk about the AFC North a little bit, because this is a division very talented across the board. Still definitely some uncertainty left to be solved with the Deshaun Watson potential suspension. That hasn't been handed down at the time of this recording yet. But I wanted to kind of walk through each AFC North team with you really quickly in this second segment and just talk about your thoughts on them, if they are threats to the Ravens, how you think the Ravens match up with them. So let's start with Cincinnati. Let's just dive into Cincinnati, talk about a team that really beat down Baltimore bad in two matchups last season. I mean, you can't really work around that. Joe Burrow, a great year for him. Jamar Chase lit up the Ravens twice. They also have T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. That offense looks good. Then on the defensive side of the ball, they have some players there too. I mean, how are you feeling about Cincinnati this year and how the Ravens match up with them in 2022?
So I'm kind of scared for the Ravens when it comes to Cincinnati. And it's interesting because everyone is kind of shut out the Cincinnati Bengals talk. I mean, we rarely hear how they're going to be retooled and refocused and all that. I think it's interesting how teams or people want to talk about, teams like, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, but they lost Tyreek Hill. So, the Miami Dolphins. We got to talk about the Miami Dolphins. And what's Tua Tagovailoa going to be and how's he going to be? And then you talk about all these other teams over in the AFC West, and they're awesome. The Cincinnati Bengals, they are the real deal. Their defense is sound and solid and young and fast. Their offense is explosive. They have, talent at every level. I think Jamar Chase is about to step up and take it to a next level. When you look at Joe Burrow, yeah, we thought we were like, Ben, we got to worry about Ben Roethlisberger. Yep, you did. He was a phenomenal quarterback. Clearly, he got the edge over Baltimore in the last few games, and obviously the last game that he was going to play against them. So that's, something that's kind of sticks in your craw. But here comes Joe Burrow. Just when you thought it was going to, kind of settle down, you thought for a hot second maybe Baker Mayfield, but you're staring at, a back and forth, healthy quarterback rival game of the ages for the AFC North for years to come.
Yeah, and I feel like for for Cincinnati, they're a team that definitely, like, you can't count them out. I mean, after what they did, because regardless of how healthy they were and whatever, they still went into the playoffs. And I mean, they beat really good teams. And, for as much as it feels like the rivalry is like blossomed, like it feels like the Ravens Bengals rivalry is like here, it's arrived. But I think the Ravens are better matched up to them this year just because, well, obviously health permitting, because hopefully Marcus Peters will be back at full strength. Hopefully Marlon Humphrey, it seems like he's already back, but the secondary now with the Ravens adding also Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. Also, I think with the Ravens, hopefully again, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, hopefully getting Ronnie Stanley back too, Nick Boyle coming back at full strength. All these guys, those are other additions, and they beefed up that offensive line. So Trey Hendrickson, who gave Alejandro Villanueva fits last season, fits. Hopefully the new hopefully the new tackle duo of a healthy Stanley and Morgan Moses will be able to fare better against that. So right now I have the Ravens winning the AFC North in a tiebreaker with Cincinnati. Like, I think they're going to finish with the same record, and then there'll be like the divisional tiebreaker, which, by the way, the Ravens went 1-5 in the division last year. So that was not a great divisional showing from them. But Q, let's move on to Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh is a team that you can never count out. Mike Tomlin does a great job of running that organization. Now, you mentioned Ben Roethlisberger no longer in Pittsburgh. Juju Smith-Schuster also no longer there, that wide receiver quarterback duo. But they added a lot of talent. I mean, Kenny Pickett, who knows if he's going to start or if it's going to be Mitch Trubisky to start off. So either way, the Ravens tend to feast, their defense at least feast on rookie quarterbacks. Their disguises give a lot of issues, but with Najee Harris there, you also have Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, who came on, and that defense. I mean, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, all those guys. How you feeling about Pittsburgh this year?
I'm telling you right now, like as you're saying those names, and I'm looking at the list, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, Hayward and Minka and TJ, and oh my gosh, I just think when you talk about Mike Tomlin, you talk about Brian Flores, who's now on that coaching staff. This is a team that takes pride in what they do. They're a good, sound, solid football team that is always prepared and ready to compete. What is it? I don't know how many seasons that we're looking at that they've had a non-losing season. Like that's just remarkable. And then that goes to Mike Tomlin preparing his guys to, go out there and perform and do their best. So it's a model of consistency. They don't have Ben Roethlisberger. We don't know what Pickett and Mitch Trubisky can do. I think both guys have a lot to prove. I think that it, in my mind, might go to Mitch Trubisky to begin with, and we'll see how it unfolds from there. Who's there? They got a young, talented running back. What's his name?
Najee Harris.
Thank you. Najee Harris, I'm curious to see what, year 2 is going to be like for him. I think, he was good and strong and productive, but I think he's going to have even a greater role this year. So Baltimore 1-5, it doesn't sound right. It just doesn't, last year, because of all the injuries and everything, I like a matchup of health versus Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, and take my chances. Marcus Peters, guys who feel really good about their game, and Patrick Queen and how he's going to, be able to transform himself again into a higher height. I love the fact that you look at the D line and what they can do against a Najee Harris. I'm telling you, health versus health. Pittsburgh's defensive front, yeah, they're no joke. Hendrickson and the boys over at the Bengals, they're no joke. But give me a healthy Ronnie Stanley. Let's see what you can do against a talented young guy in Linderbaum, and that's what Moses got his swagger and his veteran brilliance. I'm liking it. I'm liking the matchups. I'm liking Kohler. I'm liking Likely. Do we have an all-pro tight end? Oh my God, we do. Mark Andrews, come on now. So, both teams are going to give them fits for sure, because it's the AFC North. It's what happens. But health versus health, I'm liking the Ravens' chances.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, the biggest part of it is because the Ravens have so much success against either like the mid-ish tier quarterbacks. I'm not saying Trubisky's a terrible player or anything, but he has not lived up to that second overall pick billing that he had when he was drafted by Chicago. He's coming to Pittsburgh for a redemption chance. It seems like he will win that starting job, but I think the Ravens can beat Mr. Trubisky. I think they can. I think their defense is too good not to. I think that if Kenny Pickett's in there, the Ravens feast against those rookie quarterbacks. Their defense is just very complex. So I think that and a bunch of other factors is also a decision, and just why I think the Ravens, they'll be okay against Pittsburgh. Maybe it will be a split because Lamar Jackson has, throughout his entire career, I think the one team he has struggled the most against from a defensive perspective is Pittsburgh's defense. I think Pittsburgh's defense has given him the most trouble over the course of his career. But this is a year that I think he could potentially change that. But you're talking about these edge rushers, Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt. How about Myles Garrett over there in Cleveland? That's a player that's going to give the Ravens offensive line and has very many fits. I mean, what a talented guy that is. Obviously, again, the kind of uncertainty surrounding Deshaun Watson is there, but they have a pretty talented roster. Nick Chubb is a player that has also given the Ravens some trouble. They've remodeled their wide receiver room with Amari Cooper there. Are you feeling that Cleveland could be a threat to Baltimore in the AFC North this year?
Yeah, distractions, any coach will tell you they don't want to see distractions. They just want they just want to go out there and play. What does that mean? That means that you show up on time. There's no off-field issues. Health-wise, the trainer isn't bugging you because so-and-so can't practice. Yeah, you tell me a perfect scenario like that, and I'll wake you up from your dream. There is no perfect scenario. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be, an issue. But I think for what we see in Cleveland, clearly now Baker is no longer there, and Deshaun Watson is up front and center. If anything, that is a mega distraction. I'd be curious to see how that chemistry unfolds with him and the rest of the team as far as what the NFL might or might not do as far as whatever level of suspension. Myles Garrett is the team leader, and I think he will do a fine job defensively. I'd be curious to see what Moses and Stanley bring to the table versus his immense talent. After the 165-yard game what Nick Chubb did against the Ravens, I thought the Ravens held him in check. And I think the Ravens defense is poised to be even better than they were when they went up against him in round 2, if you will. Distractions, lack of chemistry, potential to see Jacoby Brissett versus having a Deshaun Watson. Yeah, I'm not necessarily going to take him for granted, but I'm not taking him in a scenario of where we look at Pittsburgh or where we look at Cincinnati.
Right. I think Cleveland, still the Watson suspension has so much impact on that because you're right. Just from a pure player perspective, the difference between Deshaun Watson and Jacoby Brissett, there is a drop off. There is a big drop off. So I think that if Deshaun Watson gets suspended for however long it is, 8 games or 10 or 12 or a year or however many, if the Ravens have to play Brissett once and Watson once as opposed to Watson twice, that gives them a better chance on the field to win the game. But I think that for Cleveland, the Ravens can beat them twice. Maybe it is a split because there are always those games that the Ravens, like, it feels like they're going to win, then they don't. And divisional games are always tough. But I think the Ravens can absolutely win this AFC North again. I said that I have them right in the tiebreaker area with Cincinnati, like around a 13-4-ish, maybe like best case 14-3-ish scenario. So yeah, I think Baltimore is in position to definitely compete in the AFC North, and I think they're going to compete in the AFC too. So coming back, we're going to be talking about the rest of the AFC, the rest of the teams, what they did, and if the Ravens can win the AFC. So stay tuned for our answers on that. Still a ton to talk about here on the show. First of all, I do want to tell you a bit about BetOnline, and BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball and those Orioles who are just on fire right now. BetOnline gets a continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head over to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker still here with Qadry Ismail. And we talked a lot about that AFC North. But let's talk about the rest of the AFC because it feels like the AFC got a lot stronger in the offseason while the NFC didn't really do too much. Made a couple moves here and there, but a lot of the talent coming over from the NFC to the AFC. Matt Ryan coming over, Khalil Mack coming over, Russell Wilson coming over, Devontae Adams coming. Like, I could keep going and going and going. There are a lot of teams, Q, that could challenge the Ravens for a playoff spot, for the right to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. I mean, who are some of these teams that you're looking at is pure threats to them? I look to the AFC East with Buffalo and Miami and New England. The AFC West has all four of those teams: Los Angeles, Kansas City. You got Las Vegas there as well. And also, I think in the AFC South, the Colts are a team that could do some damage. Tennessee as well. Who are the top teams that maybe scare you the most when you're talking about the Ravens, and who could compete with them for the AFC Championship?
So I think out of the AFC East, it's kind of interesting because you're going to play the Jets, you're going to play New England. They are not playing Miami. I don't have
Yeah, they're playing all the teams in the AFC East.
So they are, yeah. So they are playing the AFC East. In that, Buffalo is the elephant in the room, talent wise. Bam. You look at the Jets, that should be a W. It's early in the year. The Jets might think that they're really good. You look at Tua and the boys, I think this is a revenge game in the back of some Ravens' minds. When it comes to New England, last I checked, the fan base hates the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they detest and cannot stand the New England Patriots. There's no respect. There's no love lost when it comes to the Patriots and their smugness. So they don't have Tommy anymore. And I think that this is where, you just continue to just stick it to them and be like, ha ha. So, Bill Belichick is always going to have his team prepared. That's something that just is a given. So no team outside of the Bills over there in the East really concern me as far as versus the Ravens.
Yeah, what about that West? That West is a whole different. I think that's the best division in football right now. You have the Chiefs, you have the Broncos, you have the Raiders, you have the Chargers. I think all four of those teams could compete for their division, first of all. And honestly, all four of those teams can maybe make the playoffs if everything goes right for them.
I think the Chiefs, they've been there, done that, gives them a decided advantage. I think that Russell Wilson, if he, gets comfortable with his team and they get comfortable with him, can definitely make some noise. But when you look at, Las Vegas, I think that is a team in my mind that, concerns me just because of the fact that even subconsciously they took it to, Baltimore. Los Angeles is a team where, their talent is one thing, but their production and their wins, sometimes it's more smoke and mirrors. So I would say, yeah, you're right. Every team you can say out there is a bona fide threat to Baltimore. But if I had to pick one team, I would probably lean more towards Kansas City just because of them being there and done that in the past.
Yeah, you can never count out Mahomes and Kelsey, and although Andy Reid, obviously a great coach as well. I really like what Las Vegas did. I think they built a really, really good roster. They brought in Chandler Jones too. So that's a roster that has a lot of talent to depth on it. The Broncos are Russell Wilson. I think also with a lot of those teams in the West, like they could each win their division, and then you could have 3 wildcard teams. Like that's literally how good the division is right now. In the South, it's not as sunshine and rainbows. I'd say Houston isn't necessarily a threat this year. Jacksonville, I think they might be a couple years away. So you're really looking at Tennessee, who lost A.J. Brown, and Indianapolis, who added Matt Ryan. I mean, what do you think about that division and who could challenge Baltimore in it?
I don't really look at them as too much of a threat outside of Tennessee. I think Matt Ryan, that, in my opinion, is going to take him a bit to kind of get comfortable with things. I don't see it happening. I think he's a stat machine, and that's about it. I think wins and losses. Was it Jonathan Taylor? He's a beast. But I think they got a great linebacking core. I think that they're fast, but there's something that just I'm like, yeah, okay. Is he an upgrade over Wentz? Yep. But no, I think if anything, Tennessee, with Mike Vrabel and the way he has his guys prepared and play, I think that team and the fact that they faced this Ravens ball club and given them some fits, plus through the playoffs, even though they exercised that demon when they went to Tennessee and got a much needed win on the road. But yeah, I think Tennessee more than anything. Jacksonville, yeah, they're too far down the road to really be anything of significance.
All right, Q, it's the time everyone's been waiting for. The big question of the day: can the Ravens win the AFC? Now, I know a lot of people, they look to Buffalo right now, Cincinnati, Kansas City, and those are like the ultimate favorites to win the whole conference. But I think when you're looking at a team like Baltimore, again, they thrive as underdogs. It feels like they've been forgotten a little bit going into this year. A lot of talented teams. There's only going to be one team that represents the AFC. Can the Ravens be that team?
I think they can. I honestly believe when it comes to speed of the game, and as long as the bigger picture is health, um, I just don't see it being an issue. Like it just isn't possible to have that much talent and it fits offensively and defensively, and the fact that you might get Bowser and Ojabu coming in later in the year too. Like, what are we saying? Like, my goodness, JK and Gus are just studs when they're healthy. And the Ronnie Stanley effect. Like, you got talent. I think the two young tight ends, I keep saying it, like, them dudes are gonna make bully ball, back on the map, and they're not even gonna be the featured guy. Who's gonna take it away is Mark Andrews, and so AFC they absolutely can go toe to toe. Buffalo, absolutely health wise, that's what I'm talking about. But absolutely go toe to toe with Buffalo. Absolutely can stare down Kansas City. They already got that monkey off their back. Yeah, I think Tennessee got that monkey off their back. And Denver, sure, you got Russell Wilson, but he is a new player in this scenario. I'm again leaning heavily the elephant in the room, Cincinnati, because see, even in all that, I almost forgot Cincinnati. Cincinnati's the real deal. I think that they're the ones that scare me the most.
Yeah, when you look at a pure health perspective, like when you say, all right, everybody's healthy, and obviously that's not what's ultimately going to happen. People are going to get injured. But if the Ravens can stay relatively healthy throughout the entire, they get their guys back. Everybody's at 100% for the most part. Maybe you lose one or two key pieces instead of like 20 to 25 key pieces. It becomes a lot more of, oh wow, this roster is really, really talented. Plus other teams will lose guys to us, not like just the Ravens. But at the same time, everybody thinks about, well, what if for 2021? What if the Ravens were healthy in 2021? I think they could have made some real noise in the playoffs last year if they were healthy, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. So I think that the Ravens can absolutely win the AFC 2Q. I 100% agree with you. I think that they have one of the most talented rosters, not just in the AFC, but in the NFL in general. So if they can keep those guys on the field, and again, it's on paper. So if everybody meshes together, everything is great. It feels like they will, because there's a lot of continuity on that offense with some new-ish pieces added. Defense, there's some couple guys you still got to get acclimated, but I think those guys will fit in well. I'm all on board for the Ravens winning the AFC in 2022. There are going to be teams that challenge them, and it's no guarantee they win the AFC, but I think they can be right in the thick of things when it comes to winning that conference. But Q, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me here, and when we get back next week, hopefully I won't be doing Lock the Ravens After Dark anymore. Hopefully we'll get the real background behind us, and we'll continue talking Ravens as training camp right on the horizon then.
I tell you what, the fact that training camp is here, it's whew, I'm so excited that sometimes I forget, like, training camp is just a stepping stool towards the regular season. But this is where the fun of who's going to make the team and how guys are looking. And you from a fan perspective, you get up close and personal, and you're right there on the sideline watching the guys. So I think that that's going to be really fun and cool to see, especially after the few years of COVID and all the things. This will be really cool just to have some normalcy, if you will.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. And then you got the preseason. You're looking at guys who are fighting for their spots on the team, some undrafted players who I think could be really, really good guys for him. But thanks so much, Qadry. I appreciate you as always. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here on Monday, we'll be diving into more Ravens talk, of course. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I will see you here on Monday.